Welcome back to the Overthinking podcast, where we take all the fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle chaos in your brain and help you finally make sense of it and put it into action. Today's episode is just that. All the questions, concerns, and chaos heard directly from you, our listeners. Heads up, this will be likely a multi-part episode because we've got a lot of questions to answer. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions so far. We're going to keep this form floating so we can keep all of your burning questions and keep answering them.
I also want to first say thank you to everybody who's been patient with us, because you may have noticed that previous episodes, the sound hasn't been exceptional, right? It's been the bane of my existence. And let me tell you, we've been faking it till we make it this entire time. So if you've been with us on this journey, I just wanted to say thank you so much. But hopefully now the sound will be a lot better, because Brie and I are now recording 100% virtually because Homegirl is sadly and also excitedly in Chicago. This is actually our first episode where Brie is living full on in Chicago now. So, yeah.
I've had my first full 24 hours as a transplant Chicagoan. And I don't know if you guys have been following my Instagram stories, but it has been a labor of love getting out here and a death by a million paper cuts. But
which we'll do a whole episode on that.
Yes, we even talked about that today. We were like, no, today's not going to be the day to reflect on the move yet, because there's so much left to be unseen. Like our power went out yesterday. So
yeah, you're in the midst of the chaos, which is not really when you want to talk about it, but maybe that's the best time to.
I was like, I am not yet processed. Okay, I need to process the pre-move before I can even talk about the move part.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. And before we dive into this episode, let's break the ice.
This or that.
We have a couple options here for this or that, so stay tuned for the other ones. But
you come up with some good ones.
Yeah, I can take them a little bit spirally, but I want to make sure that everyone feels included and has a chance to respond. So what's our this or that today?
This or that today is going to be, would you rather 1 week of complete phone-free peace or go viral for something cringy? How do you define that cringy? Like, what do you define as cringy?
Clickbaity, or
like you said, something stupid?
Yeah, they're like, like something clickbaity, like get your 6-pack in 2 days movement.
And then a bunch of people like talk shit on you?
Yeah. Actually, I did post something. Well, I guess honestly, both of these things I would like, but I personally would love a week of phone-free peace. Like,
sounds great.
No one can talk to me. No one can reach me. No one can ping me. I'm like fully off the grid.
Yeah. Honestly, that sounds great. I think I'm going to pick that one too. I think my hang up is like, what is the cringy, right? Like if I am the Hawk Tua girl, and I go viral, and then I'm like famous and I'm like making money from one thing I said, that doesn't sound too bad. Like that sounds pretty nice actually. And it's not that cringy, right? Like she was just saying something kind of funny.
Yeah. It's like the catch me outside. How about that?
Exactly. But if it's like, I don't know, I shit my pants or something, like I don't really want to be famous for that.
Right. There was a rant, and Instagram's algorithm is so weird. There's one reel that went absolutely, I think I have like over 1.4 million views.
Damn.
Last time I checked. And it was literally me eating a slab of salmon out of the wrapper and just bit into it like a protein bar. And everyone went wild. They were like, she's going to get this E. coli and that. And so like in that situation, I'm like, Sure.
I don't give a fuck if it's like that.
But the feeling of having a full week with no one reaching me, nothing is better than that.
Yeah, that sounds great. This was years ago when I was competing in powerlifting, but I had a video go viral similar. It had over 1 million views or some shit like that. And it was a pretty good squat, right? But like it was near max. So form started to break down a little bit. There was like a little bit of knee cave, not like anything scary, but there was a little bit of knee cave. And what was funny enough is I had Adam you didn't go to Cali Elite, but there was this guy who was spotting me behind, as one does for appropriately does for a squat. And he had his arms underneath my armpits. Like, it was not a weird, like, touching thing at all. It was not creepy. Like, I asked him to, and the internet lost their mind. They were like, this bitch doesn't know how to squat. That guy's touching her inappropriately. So, like, something like that, if that goes viral, like, I don't care. You know, throw shade my way. I don't really give a shit.
All press is good press.
That's right. There's no such thing as bad PR, baby. Look at dipshit in the White House. That's where we are.
Unless you're shitting on us for this podcast, we're still a little bit
In which case,
I'm a little bit
don't say anything.
sensitive. Don't shit on us quite yet. Well, I'm really excited for this because I feel like this episode helps gain insight for us into the listener's brain and like what people really want to learn from us. And so far, we've basically just decided that week, like, okay, what do we want to talk about today? What do we want to talk about? So some of this Q&A is a little bit of market research for us to be like, what do you guys actually want to learn from us?
Yeah.
But it's also a way for us to engage with you because on this podcast, we're just talking to each other, but we're really thinking about you, the listener, the whole time we're doing this.
Yeah. And I think as professionals, we often have a blind spot, right? Like when we talk about nutrition or we talk about metabolism, you and I know what we're saying. Sometimes we forget the pieces that make it make sense.
Yeah.
In a way that like is tangible and actionable for the listener. So, you know, this is why this was important for us is like, we want to be able to fill those holes of the topics that we've already talked about. Like we did get a ton of nutrition questions. We did get a ton of lifting questions. So I think a lot of it is going to be around some of the lifting questions that you guys submitted. So let's dive into question number 1. This question is from Alexa. What's the ideal training schedule to lose weight and gain muscle? So
I love that all these questions, first of all, we're going to structure them kind of like the textbook answer. Like this is what is researched and like this is what people say, the textbook answer, right? And then there's kind of like the nuance to it. Like we'll give you our like this is what we would do.
This is the coaching perspective, coaching POV.
And also like human perspective. Like we are human women who are navigating these issues too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So the ideal textbook answer to this question, Alexa, is what fits your schedule, even if it's just a few days. And the recommended amount to partake in moderate to vigorous activity is 150 to 300 minutes per week, which equates to around 3 to 5 hour sessions per week. And my beef, this is my personal beef because I always have to pick fights with things, is my beef with health initiatives is that they're often convoluted and cryptic. So when you read something from the World Health Organization that's like 150 to 300 minutes of moderate vigorous activity per week, the average person, including myself, is like, what the fuck does that mean? What the fuck? So, like, if you have
also,
to...
who says 300 minutes? Get out of here with that.
Who's
Don't
counting your days in minutes? No, I'm not counting my days in minutes. And I'm, you know, even seasoned lifters probably are, like, not taking inventory on what moderate to vigorous activity is. Like, is that, you know, hard sprinting? Is that, you know... Are we referring to the RPE scale? Like, what does that mean? So that's where this honest answer comes in. And if you want to take and give us your perspective, Brie, like I would love to hear your coaching POV on that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll lead with what's tangible and what's nuanced because I coach people all over the world, have been coaching people for a long time. And like you said, it's about what you can do consistently. So what's the ideal training schedule? What can you fit in consistently? If week 1, you can do 5 sessions because you're motivated and you do it. And then week 2, you do 1 because you burnt yourself out or now, you know, a kid is sick and you can't go to the gym. Like I'd rather you train super focused and intentful in 2 1-hour sessions or 3 than 5 distracted 2-hour sessions where you're just doing garbage volume for literally no reason.
Agreed.
So for me, what's the ideal training schedule is 1, what works with your schedule? And then also we've talked about intensity. So if the less you're training, kind of like the more intense we want to make those sessions, right? Because you want to most bang for your buck in that hour, 2 hours per week. Yeah. So what I would suggest is instead of like 2 really long sessions, I would do, maybe 5 30-minute sessions can be great. Like you can get a lot done in 30 minutes. We talk about this all the time. Mm-hmm. So I would look at what you've done over the last 2 months what hours you've actually had available, whether you took advantage of them or not, and just do a little audit. Like, yeah, I probably could commit on my worst week to 2 hours a week. Okay, great. Then structure those as 2 full body, which we'll get into, 2 full body sessions where you hit the ideal sets per week or close to it, and give it your best freaking effort. Yeah. Turn your phone off.
As a rule, to kind of like if you want a quick quantitative answer, I would say 3 is ideal and no more than 5, in my opinion. That's my coaching POV.
I could not. The only time if you're doing like more than 5 sessions is like if you're doing 2 lifts in that session and that's it.
And if you're like eating and training to recover for that many workouts, like nobody, even you or I, really needs more than 5. That's just excessive. Like I want you to be active on those rest days. Don't just like be a couch potato, which, you know, we all need that, at least one. Me personally need 1 couch a day per week, but you know, you can go for walks, you can go for hikes, you can ride your bike, you can do so much on those days outside of the gym. And I want to like kind of keep this moving along. So do you have any last minute thoughts on this first question?
I was thinking we should move into question 3 because it's kind of similar.
Yes, agreed.
So basic recommendations to see progress, but you don't want to make lifting all that you do, which I totally get. I want to throw in yoga. I want to throw in Pilates. I want to throw in sports. How do we do that? And what is the minimum effective dose for lifting to still get the results?
Yeah. So there's one study, and we'll link all of these studies again in the show notes, but Ralston et al., it was a meta-analysis that we found. So for well-trained novice and intermediate individuals, the use of medium or high weekly sets in strength training seems to be appropriate. So that means like you're repeating muscle groups multiple times per week. More advanced trainees may benefit from additional time and training volume to reap the smaller increases in performance. And we know that's true because, you know, as our training age increases, like you or I have been training for 12 years, we're going to need a little bit more stimulus than someone who is kind of still taking stock of those newbie gains, we call them. So you'll probably see much more progress much more quickly when you're new.
The more trained you are, the more stimulus you can produce from a movement like a goblet squat, right? I can grab an 80-pound weight and make it feel really, really, really hard. But a newbie might not know exactly what hard really needs to feel like, right? Doing a goblet squat with a 5-pound weight might feel relatively hard to someone new, but the more reps you put in, the more experience you get, you realize, okay, yeah, this amount of work made me this, gave me these results. But I think the other thing to just move into is the actual number of sets people need. So there is, like you said, a lot of research in hypertrophy and trying to grow muscle.
Brad Schoenfeld is a strength and conditioning coach who also puts out a lot of research in the space. So we often lean on his findings, especially when it comes to general and athletic people. So there's a study from 2016 that training a muscle group 2 times per week is more effective for hypertrophy than once a week. So let's say you have a goal to train glutes. You want to try to hit some part of your glute twice a week. You don't need to lift daily. So 3 full body workouts per week, or even 2 upper lower split can be enough. And the TLDR from this is focus on compound movements. So something like a squat, deadlift, bench press, lunges, things like that, with moderate to heavy loads, and then progress weekly in some way. So maybe that's adding a couple reps per week. Maybe that's adding a set. Maybe it's decreasing your rest time. If you don't remember, go back to the progressive overload episode. I believe it's episode 9, where we dive into a little bit of the specifics of that. And then also track effort and prioritize your recovery.
I think the biggest part here, like you said in the beginning, is the intent. So if we're doing 3 times a week, full body split, and you only have a certain amount of time, the reason why we want to do compound movements, because you're eliciting a response from a higher volume of muscle tissue, right? If I'm doing a back squat, I'm obviously using my quads, my hamstrings, my glutes, my low back, my core, my calves are even working. My upper back is holding this weight. My shoulders are working. They're stabilizing the weight. So there's so many more muscle fibers that are being taxed when you're doing a compound movement versus say I'm just doing a seated knee extension. My upper body isn't doing anything. I'm just like the blow up man. My quads are really getting that. So in some scenarios, that's really great. But in a lot of scenarios for people who are short on time and want to really maximize their time in the gym, yes, doing bigger compound movements is better.
Yeah.
Another nuance to kind of be aware of, if you are someone who is trying to build their glutes specifically, lower body typically will not need as higher volume as upper body because our lower body has just obviously more volume than our upper body. However, our
it's
quads,
also stronger, so you can like apply more stimulus per set.
Yeah, so you can get more out of doing less sets for lower body. However, movements or muscle groups like glutes and quads do respond well to like a moderate volume. So something, still in that 10 sets per week range. So like if glutes is your example, then maybe 3 sets on Monday, you're going to do hip thrust. Then on Wednesday, you're going to do 3 sets of lunges or something like, single leg glute bias. And then on the last day, maybe you'll do 4 sets of a different movement, like a seated hip abduction or a kickback, or you'll do 2 sets of 2 movements. So like that's how you can kind of structure 10 sets of a week. And that doesn't really feel like that much, right? If you're like, I only want to build my glutes. Okay, well then you're doing 10 sets of glutes. Obviously, we'd like you to do other stuff in that session, but
Yep.
Boom.
And then moving into part 2 of this question, because the person that asked this question had a second part, which is how to think about planning a workout. How often do you change things? How to know what muscle groups to focus on. So hopefully we answered some of that, which is, focus on your compound moves so you get the most bang for your buck out of your workout. And then call back to episode 9, the progressive overload, where we discuss the elements of what makes a good program. So that's going to be your sets, your reps, how to progress those things. Of course, auto regulation. So episode 10 as well, how to determine how much intensity or weight you should use for every single set that you have. And then gradually increase to drive those adaptations over time. So think of your session or your block, think of your training in blocks, right? So we want to repeat similar exercises for 4 to 6 weeks. I even stay on my programming for sometimes 8 weeks or more, depending on if I'm still enjoying the exercises and if they're working. Like I've been doing Bulgarian split squats to some variety for the last 16 weeks. And I'm still having fun with it. I'm still seeing progress. I'm consistently growing and adding more weight to them. So there's no real reason for me to change them or take them out of my program.
Or even when you aren't progressively overloading with load, you can still change your progressive overload variable that you're adjusting. Like maybe once you've kind of tapped out to your 100-pound dumbbells per hand because you're just wrong as hell, then maybe now we're just going to add a 1-second pause at the bottom and it's going to make that 100 pounds feel so much heavier.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It's a simple switch.
Yep.
I want to talk about training splits very briefly. So there's a couple ways we can look at how should I organize the movements that I'm doing? I want to build my glutes, but how should I organize it? Typically, I'll take 2 approaches. One is movement patterns. And typically, again, if you're shorter on time, this one's better for you. And then there's more body part splits where we're kind of looking at more of an aesthetic approach. But typically what I'll do is I'll look at training splits from a continuum. So if you're a very, very, very beginner, we know that you're going to, 1, benefit from doing a little bit more volume, but also you're going to benefit from doing a more of a full body training split. Because if I give you a full day push and you just started working out, your shoulders are going to fall off your body, right? So someone who's just starting or in their first year training, you probably shouldn't do a push pull lower split, but you might want to start with a full body split. And then once you've gained some traction there, you can go to a non-complementary split. So squatting on one day and pulling on that same day, and then hinging. So an example could be box squats and lat pull downs because they're non-complementary. They're not going to affect each other when you're training. And then for the next step would be maybe then you can do just a full upper body day and not be completely trashed. So then you go to an upper and a lower split. And then finally you'd get to a push pull lower. But the reason why I'm explaining this is because a lot of advanced lifters will go back down the continuum. So even an advanced lifter like me and Kelsey, who've been lifting for 12 years, a full body training split is just as effective. And actually, sometimes more effective for people because my life stress is so high that by dedicating how I'm stressing to my training, it allows me to recover better when I'm doing a full body training split.
I actually changed my Sunday workout to a full body day because I honestly was just like feeling really stale on my Sunday specifically. Like I usually do legs on Sunday because it's traditionally one of the days that I feel like I have more energy, but I've just been like showing up to the gym on Sunday mornings like, oh, I just don't want to do this. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do things that sound fun. And for me, that was like RDLs and push-ups. So I was like, cool, sounds good. But to kind of like also simplify this, like the way that you could think about planning each workout is you have a squat or a hinge. You could also incorporate like a push and a pull, core, and rotation or lateral movement. So you'd want like some sort of element from all of those. And when we say push pull, that doesn't necessarily mean like bench press, seated row. That could also be like a squat is your push, a RDL is a pull. An RDL might be a pull, right? So hopefully that simplifies that a little bit. It's kind of a complicated topic, but as we like, talk about it more, maybe it'll become a little bit more fluid.
And Kelsey and I both have training programs that you can follow. So if you are someone who is struggling with organizing your workouts, let us do it for you.
Yep. Sometimes you just need to learn through like osmosis, right? Like follow a program written by an actual professional and then notice trends, and then you can kind of like go at it yourself. Moving on to question 3, and I'm going to let you answer this one, but I will ask it and then you take it away. So Tara says, ladies, where should I put sled pushes and pulls in my workout? Do they count as a compound lift like deadlifts, squats, or are they considered more accessory?
I'm really excited about this one. I did a lot of sleds in my training in my life for like D1 rowing and for CrossFit. So, and I don't do a ton of them now, to be honest. I very specifically use them more as like a nervous system, like as a primer. But let's talk about the science and then we'll talk about the real stuff. So sled pushes aren't technically a compound movement like a squat or a deadlift because they don't have a big eccentric phase. The eccentric is the way down or the muscle lengthening under tension. So it makes them like a lower soreness. Like you don't get as sore from a movement like this. And they're a little bit more like joint friendly to build strength and capacity, but they are not a compound movement. So they're similar, but they're not a compound movement because they miss on that eccentric load. And so they won't drive hypertrophy and like muscle growth as much as something like a back squat or a deadlift would. With that said, sleds do shine in other areas and can be used for different levels of athletes and also different purposes. So for beginners, I like to use them as like a finisher or like a muscle endurance finisher because again, there's not as much eccentric load. They're not going to get as sore. And so if they've done a full session, they should have a little bit more in the reserve to be able to perform a movement like this. For beginners, I also like to use them like how I've been using them recently as like a nervous system primer. So when you get into the session, you kind of feel like sluggish or like kind of like lackadaisical. If you do a sled push sprint, just like a 10-second sprint, lightweight, your brain will fire up and lock on. So kind of like a 10-second assault bike sprint. Again, 0 eccentric load. Or a 10-second, jumping jacks is like very little eccentric load. So more advanced athletes and like sprinters and power athletes and football players can use sled pushes in a more heavy and power development and like force production way because they have the base level of strength to actually produce the force needed against the sled. So they're a powerful accessory tool and they can be programmed for conditioning, like a muscle endurance finisher. They can be programmed for like power output and strength development from like a power output perspective. If you have the prerequisite strength, but you just have to be intentional about how you're doing them.
I think it's also good to mention that like we as strength athletes, people who I'm going to use that term to maybe identify as someone who avoids cardio because that's pointing at myself. Sleds can be a useful tool to increase your conditioning for lifting. It's not like power lifters or like other forms of strength athletes don't necessarily, or they shouldn't avoid cardio conditioning because it ultimately enhances your muscular ability to produce strength, produce force and power, etc. So adding things in like sled pushes or sprint training can be a good complement to strength training. And it's also very versatile for like marathon runners. Like if you've ever followed any sort of like marathon program, marathon training, or even like a 5K, of course it wants you to do those longer, moderate runs, but you probably have a day where you're doing some sort of interval training because you need a variety of capacity. You need to train a variety of capacities in order to be like a well-rounded athlete.
And the energy systems that you're referring to, they are very complex. There's like 30 levels of energy system training that we can do. So the TLDR here is that, well, actually, before I get into that, I know you're going to hate me for this. Sled can also be used as a mobility tool. Okay. As someone who has really shitty knees and chronically shitty knees, if you followed like the Ben Patrick kind of knees over toes ATG program, one of the big claims to fame was reverse sled drags, like walking reverse with the sled. And the reason for that is to get the knee over the toe and just to develop a little bit of resiliency in the VMO and one of the quad muscles that supports the knee tracking. Yep. So not to make this more complicated, but sleds are a great tool. They can be used for mobility if you're trying to heal your knees by doing reverse walking, which is a great warm-up. You can do them as a nervous system primer as a warm-up before your session if you feel sluggish. Just do some quick sprints with light weight. If you are a trained athlete who is focusing on developing power production, especially if you're a sprinter or a football player or someone who's like quick off the blocks, then I definitely would use sleds as probably like your strength balance. So like do your compound movements and then do your power production. And then the last line is that, sled work's versatile. So if you like it, find a way that matches your level, and also just find a place in your training where you're actually getting the intent that you want from it.
Yep. Moving on to question 4. This is from Elena. What is a muscle group or exercise that you think women often overlook and should focus on more? So she said her answer was chest, LOL. I agree with that, but I also specifically will say triceps. I think that women want like a toned arm, right? Like we all aspire maybe to look like Michelle Obama's arms or whoever your girl crush's arms are. Everybody wants that toned look. And I think we easily gravitate towards like bicep curls or lateral raise. Like, yes, we want to build those shoulders too. Those are the low hanging fruits. Those are the obvious ones. I think that triceps truly define what your arm looks like better than anything else. And I have a very specific exercise for this too, which is a dead stop skull crusher. So you're laying on the floor, you're doing the overhead skull crusher. If you don't, obviously you can't see us on this podcast, but if you don't know what that is, do a quick YouTube for it. You basically lay on the floor and then you dead stop the bar on the ground every single rep. And that basically like takes away that stretch reflex when you're doing the push part of it. And then that just makes your muscles work harder. So it's a little bit harder to come to a full dead stop, but it is one of the best muscle gainers that I've ever put in my programming.
Mic drop. I mean, I was going to take this from a more like quote unquote functional perspective. I like the aesthetic take on this for sure. I will say this till I'm blue in the face that triceps are 2/3 of the arm. And if you want defined arms, like you already have a bicep. You do tons of pulling stuff in your normal life. It's very rare that I'm extending my arm like all the
under
way.
Load.
Yeah. So honestly, your answer was great. Functional wise, every single person should be doing something like scapular retractions, like something focused on their mid traps. So like a bent over reverse fly or even like a rear delt fly, which is for rear delts, but a lot of people do them wrong.
I would also say that like any rotational work is probably something that most people avoid doing, myself included. I feel like I've only really made an intentional effort to add more rotational or like transversal work into my routine these days. Like I love a half kneeling windmill, but that's neither here nor there. So Elena also asks, sometimes she has a hard time pivoting in her program if a machine or rack isn't available at the gym. Do you have any tips or examples of what you would do if you can't do a certain exercise? For example, squats on the squat rack, racks are taken, Smith machine is taken. what exercise would you pivot to in that situation?
This is a great question because I feel like exercise selection is such a skill also. So the more practice you get in following programs that professionals have written, the better you learn how movements feel in your body. So if you've never done a hack squat before, how are you supposed to know that it's a more quad dominant squat variation than a low bar back squat? You won't, because you haven't done it before. So before even getting into that, I just think everyone should should have a coach or follow some different programs. But I would honestly just Google it, ChatGPT it. That's going to be the quickest answer. But from a experience perspective, I would say that if you know that you're going to do squats, okay, what does that movement elicit a response to? Quads, back, core. Okay, then do a goblet squat.
Yeah. I would also say, like, if I want someone to try to do the squat that I have programmed for them, I would say skip it and like go to your next exercise and wait until it opens up. So if you end up having to do it at the end of your workout, like, yeah, it's not ideal to do like your main at the end of the workout, but if it's one time, sure. It may be something that you need to change up your days, right? Like if you know everybody does legs on Monday, then maybe you might need to do legs on Tuesday.
Yeah, I actually think the big tip here too is that if someone is using the squat rack or the Smith machine, I have no shame going up to them and being like, hey, how many sets do you have left?
Totally. Don't be shy.
Don't be shy. Talk to people. They're humans. It does two things. One, it gets the information, how much longer you have to wait. And two,
it shows there's someone waiting.
And it nudges the person to be like, stop fucking around on your Instagram and please give me the leg press. Yeah.
And a lot of times too, like this happens to me all the time where I'm like, hey, how many more sets do you have on the leg press? And a guy is like, oh, do you want to work in? And 50% of the time I'll be like, yeah, sure, whatever. Cause I'm doing like a similar weight to them. But other times I'll be like, oh no, I'll just leave my bag here. And when you're done, I'll come back over. So that's the quick answer, I guess.
Are we going to glaze over the fact that you just said that you're like, yeah, I'll probably squat as much as this guy will.
Yeah, well.
Of course you will.
I love flexing on the leg extension. Like I always look to there's like 2 leg extensions at the gym that I go to. And I always like look to see what the guy next to me is doing. And if he's like 205, I'm like, yep, got that. Granted, he's probably doing like more reps than I am. I'm doing like 6 to 8, but still like leg extension is one of those machines that everybody sandbags. So I will like just like casually look over and be like, yo, what up?
I like when a man leaves the leg press with 3 plates on each side. I'm like, you don't have to strip it off. I'll take it off for you.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah,
I'll start with that.
I'm doing that for reps. No big deal.
How many did you do? 2 or 3? Okay, got it. Next question.
Okay, next question. This is also from Anonymous. What was the biggest realization that you had in your early fitness days that changed your perspective? Do you want to go first?
That lifting won't make you bulky. Like truly, I know it sounds so cliche, but I had to like really learn that because I was bulky I have been bulky my entire life. So everything made me bulky.
How did you work through that? Or how did you accept that like maybe you wanted to be bulky?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that actually just following programs and like really following them to the T in tandem with actually doing my own research. Like actually reading research has really helped me shift my perspective from all of like the actually clickbaity shit that is pretty like marketable.
When you say like research, does that mean like you started looking up to people who were like as strong and doing the similar sports to you? Or like, what does that mean? Right? Because like there's not a lot of like scientific research that's like, be bulky, lift, it's great. Like, I don't know like specifically what that would look like in scientific research. So did that just look like looking at other CrossFitters like Brooke Entz or whoever it was that was like big at the time? And you were like, oh, actually like they look pretty fucking dope.
Yeah, it was a combination of reading research around nutrition as well as the type of training I was doing. Like I was doing just endurance with D1 rowing. And then I was doing just CrossFit after that. And then I was doing just bodybuilding. So then now I'm in this kind of phased approach where I take the greatest hits from all those things. And I just have a lot more education around what stuff, like style of training I need to elicit the body composition that I want. And I also need to look at nutrition from like a metabolite perspective, like what ratio of carbs and fats matters if I want to elicit a specific response. But overall, the most important things I learned to avoid getting bulky was actually to increase my non-exercise activity. So I'm kind of going around in the circles here, but that actually was the biggest thing, was that the type of training changed, but I also just learned what I needed for my body to elicit the type of body composition that I wanted.
Yeah. And you also probably looked at like your eating less as like, oh, I ate this, therefore I need to go work out, and more of like, okay, I'm doing rowing, I'm doing CrossFit, so I need all of these substrates in order to fuel that activity.
Right. Yeah.
I love it. Mine will be brief. My biggest realization was that I shouldn't change my exercises every single week. When I first started working out and I was like a very new trainer for my clients and myself, I kind of I fell into the trap of like, let's do something different all the time because it's fun and it's novel and you want to keep it interesting and variety is the spice of life or whatever. But you don't really see results
muscle
from
confusion.
that. So
that's what they call it.
It's what? Yeah, muscle confusion. Yeah. So like, I think I just learned that I wasn't seeing results and I was like, why? And then same as you, I started reading articles. I started reading blogs of people that like did look how I wanted to. And then I saw that they were repeating the exercises every single time or every week. And then I joined a powerlifting team and then it was like the same for like 6 to 8 weeks, with some progressions built in there. And I was like, oh, I'm actually seeing results now. So it was like that light bulb moment that I got pretty early on in my training. So
just because you want to change, it doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah.
Just because you're sick of Bulgarian split squats doesn't mean you should change them.
Or like if you're sick of Bulgarian split squats with a dumbbell, try Bulgarian split squats with the Smith machine. Like do the same exercise, but mix up how you do it. So you don't have to always change things. You shouldn't change things week to week, but maybe if you're getting a little bored or stale, change the variety in which you do it.
Yeah. And I love your tip on doing like the fuck around Friday or like transitioning your session into a fuck around Friday, even if it's on a Sunday, because you just need a little hit of fun and you're always going to push more in movements that you enjoy doing.
Yep. And you're going to be doing this. You should be doing this for the long haul. Like we're not really working out. I mean, we work out because we want to look and feel a certain way, right? Yes, that is true. But it's a lot like brushing your teeth, right? Like it's something that you're going to have to do because we want to be healthy, because we want strong muscles and bones into our 80s, right? It's just something we're going to have to do to some degree. So mix it up, take breaks when you need to. I feel like we're going to go down a rabbit hole if we go any further. So moving on to
are just some fun ones. They're fun ones.
These are fun ones. So Becca says, and I'll let you take this answer, hacks from smoking and not getting the munchies.
Why do I have to take this answer? I have very minimal control over this. Okay.
We both have our own answer. I'll just let you go first.
Okay. High munchies is definitely something I'm navigating.
We all now. Are. We're not perfect.
Well, truly the one solution I found to not going crazy in the pantry is that like if I get high before dinner and then that way dinner is my munchies and I already have like a pre-planned, pre-weighed, pre-logged thing that I have no guilt about eating every last bite.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of got into that mistake last night and I was like, I had that oh shit moment where I was like, I need to make dinner right now or it's going to end bad.
But you have no good munchies in your house.
That is intentional.
Yeah. But when I was house sitting for you, I was like, what is going on? There's not a single piece of chocolate in here.
Because know thyself, Socrates or something. Know thyself. I cannot have highly palatable things around. Like I know what my off limits foods are, which are like Oreos, fruit snacks.
Not off limits, just off limits to having around.
Yes. If I want them, I can go get them, but they cannot live in my house because I will eat them every single day and I will eat the entire thing. So my answer for how to subvert the munchies is I'm going through the Rolodex of priorities, right? Like, am I just actually hungry? Which is likely, right? Like, you're probably just hungry. So did you eat enough all day? And by enough, did you have protein at almost every meal? Did you have enough carbs? Did you have everything that includes a well-balanced diet throughout your day? If the answer is yes, try to select, palatable foods that are conservative in the calorie department. Like I call them approved foods around. Like I have the Trader Joe's mini ice cream cones because I can eat one or two and that's enough. I keep a lot of fruit around because I can fucking go ham on it. I can eat the entire box and it's still like a reasonable calorie.
Especially like tart cherries. Those are helpful for sleep too, from like a molecular perspective. So that would be a good treat.
The cotton candy grapes right now.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like, I can eat the entire box. So I try to keep foods that are like off limits out of the home. Of course, if I want them, I just have to go get them. Usually it's enough of a barrier where I'm like, I'm not leaving my couch. But if I want them, like I just go get them.
So I think you like also just having those foods just around, like you said, I want to highlight that. Like, be proactive in stocking your freezer up with some frozen grapes, some frozen cherries, some frozen berries. I think that the other two things,
like frozen fruit.
Yeah. And also like there's a time component, like to let the piece of tart cherry defrost in my mouth. It's like delaying the amount of time that I'm eating also. Like there's some science there too. The other things to check in on are fiber and hydration. So you could have eaten all of your macros for the day and you're like, I am crushing it. But then you get to like the munchie zone because you're just super dehydrated or two, like you haven't had enough fiber. So you're just like, maybe you're hungry again. You know, that could be the case.
I would always check in with yourself. Are you actually just hungry first? And then go from there. So that's how we manage munchies.
Really, really well.
I think it also depends on the strain of weed and like the kind of weed that you're smoking. Like I tend to get more munchies with like sativas or hybrids, but indicas I'm usually like fine for some reason. I
need to do my own research on that because I feel like
perform your own studies.
A sniff of cannabis makes me have munchies, so I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
Question number 7 and the last question, Kelsey. What are your
guilty pleasures? Yeah, you asked this time.
What are your guilty pleasures?
My guilty pleasures are ice cream because house motto, sometimes you need a sweet treat every day. And also video games. And I'm throwing video games in there because I think when we're looking at people on the internet, we tend to think like, oh, they have it together. They're active all the time. No, I have so many lazy hours in my day. Like I probably spend, this is going to be a little confrontational, but 3 hours playing video games.
Yeah.
Most of the days of the week. Because that's, especially in the year of the Lord 2025, I need to dissociate from the world. So I spend a lot of time playing video games because that's what like helps me shift from work into home life.
Yeah.
It is also like, if I'm feeling really stressed out or overwhelmed, it kind of like brings me down and brings me back to more calm, cool, collected Kelsey. But those are my guilty pleasures. How about you?
I feel like there's got to be a correlation between how like your perception of stress in your life relative to like how engaged you have to be in your like de-stressing activity. Mm-hmm. Like if you're super stressed CEO, like you need no vision, like you need to be in a cold, dark room and do breath work for 5 minutes. But if you're kind of like not very stressed, it's like maybe just a little walk is all good. Anyway, I digress. So when we talked about giving you like the textbook answer and then like the actual answer, my textbook answer would be like, Rice Krispie treats, macaroons, like vegan ice cream, festivals. But the real guilty pleasure that I have is being needed and feeling needed.
Wow, you're not even gonna throw the recreational drugs in the fire.
I mean, obviously, we just touched on some recreational drugs, but my guilty pleasure for that is like the combination of live music, festivals, and recreational drugs. Like that's my like biggest guilty pleasure. If I have an extra couple $100, I want to spend it doing that.
Yeah. And
But
you need
I actually
that
think
community connection. You need to feel wanted and needed. And
I think from like my guilty pleasure is my phone, and the why is my phone my guilty pleasure. It's because it's connecting me to people
Others.
needing something from me demonstrating value, me supporting people, and that feels good, but like almost to like a guilty pleasure level where I can't detach from my phone sometimes.
I totally relate to that. And I think that's like that like coach in us, right? Like we always want to have the answers. We want to be able to help. So I relate to that.
Codependent or coach? I'm just kidding.
Yes.
I really thought you were going with that.
Well, that is all the questions that we had today. We're going to have to do another episode, so stay tuned for that next week. Thank you for listening, and we will see you
on the next episode.